Hey, thanks for coming. The real premise behind this is to be of a blessing and a service to you guys. So I've known Kameron for a long time, and out of all the different individuals I've met, his history kind of talks for itself. I mean, he's been involved on the high-end luxury to the spec, side of stuff, as well as doing the track building, and worked as an acquisition guy for all your big builders. He's been out and done his own stuff. He's also owned his own excavation company, and so he's touched about every aspect of it, from the real estate and land development side. I have a high level of respect for who he is as an individual. On the spirit and light side, that's the number one thing for me, is that I have individuals around me that carry not just IQ in the space, but also good values. So he carries all those things. I'm super grateful that he was willing to take some time out of his day to, step in here and be of a blessing to you guys. He's going to have so much content, and then he's also going to have some cool templates that are assets that we'll be sending out to you guys for coming. And so we're going to just pass it over to him. As you guys have questions, Kason is in the back there. I would like for you guys to raise your hand and then be patient while we bring a mic to you, so everybody can hear. We will have a bunch of people seeing this online as well. So just feel free to ask questions, but be patient with Kason as he gets a microphone and brings it to you. So thanks for coming, and go ahead, take it away, Kameron.
Okay, thanks, Steve. So just so we're clear, I'm Kameron Spencer. I've been doing development longer than I should have. I probably should have quit 2 or 3 times when the market said that it was time to quit, but I kept doing it. I actually kind of had a mentor when I was in high school that got me into land development, and it all snowballed from there. I've loved the home building space. I've served on the HBA, both in Tucson when I worked there, here in Utah, and up in Idaho as well. And so I love being involved with the home builder community. I'm a licensed realtor as well, so I have a soft spot in my heart for everything that we do to build and sell houses in our market. And it's been a really fun career. I couldn't, even though it's been challenging at times, it's been a really fun career for me, and I've gotten to know tons of excellent people. I've worked for 4 publicly traded home builders. I've developed lots for nearly everyone that builds homes along the Wasatch Front, either through selling them lots or working directly for them. I've built 30,000 square foot mansions. I've developed tons of lots all over in all kinds of different, including condos, apartments, townhomes, everything. So I went to Weber State University and did their construction management. It was really fun. And then my first job out of university was down in Tucson working for KB Home, and got a lot of valuable experience down there. But none of the experience that I've gotten has been more valuable than the people I've met. The people I've met have mentored me and helped me along the way, and I hope to do that to future acquaintances within the industry, and hope to be of service to you, and that you get something out of this. What I want to do is just focus on the overall process of land development, and take away some of the maybe stigmas about whether land development is achievable for most people. I think everybody could do it, and it's not as scary as you think, but that's my goal, is to make it a little bit more accessible, and to let you guys know that there are tools available, and there are people out there in your network that can help you do a land development project. And so don't be afraid. Let's dive into it. And it's a pretty fun space to work in. So right out of the gate, a lot of people think that you need superpowers to be in land development. They're not wrong. There's a lot of heavy lifting in the land development space. you can make a lot of mistakes, and those mistakes can cost you time and money, and some of them you can't foresee. Some of the superpowers I wished I had in my career as a land development professional, I wish I had super strength. That'd be really cool. I could lift some of this dirt and move it myself. I wish, probably the number one thing I wish are these next two, X-ray vision or Bruce Wayne wallet. Both of those would be great, right? X-ray vision, there have been times in my career where that would have came in really handy to be able to see what's under the soil, because no matter what we do in our due diligence when we're buying projects and buying properties, that X-ray vision would come in handy if we could access that. I've come across burial grounds on sites that I've developed, and those have developed around burial grounds and delayed projects for years. We've missed markets because of things unforeseen underground. I've hit landfills that we didn't know about. I've had highly toxic asbestos dumps that I've found during land development. So you name it, I wish I could see it. That X-ray vision would definitely come in handy. Heat vision in Utah would be super valuable because we're coming up to winter and we can't really pave anything after October 15th because of the seasonality of our market. So heat vision would be great. We could just kind of warm everything up around what we're doing. Flight, telekinesis, super speed, super smarts, all those would be great. I wish I had all those. But I'm here to tell you, I don't have any of those. I'm just a regular guy, and if I can do it, so can you. So the way to get around all of these superpowers that you need is you've got to put in the extra work to plan and prepare your projects for success. So once you have the proper planning and preparation, the performance is going to come as a result of those two steps. And so if you put in the effort up front to go through the due diligence materials, to work with your contractors in your city and your engineer, you're going to find success at the end of this project, no matter how rough or rocky it is. And every one of those projects that I mentioned that I had trouble with because I didn't have X-ray vision, all of those somehow strangely worked out. So in a world that's really challenging sometimes, I think we both have to accept the challenges as they come and kind of take it for what it is, no matter how rough those challenges might be. And then from there, we also have to have a bright outlook and hope for what the future can bring, because the reality is if we put the product out there, it will be well received by the market and we'll find a space that works for everybody. And so no matter how bleak some of the things that you discover during the land development process might be, there's always room for hope that future project and the outcome will still be a good end result. And I'm here to tell you, even on the most challenging ones, that's been the case. I've seen projects go back to banks. I've seen them get foreclosed. I've seen them swap ownership. I've seen them go through lien processes and foreclosure. And one way or another, those projects work out. Are there challenges along the way? Yes, but with the proper plan and the correct preparation, all of this stuff can work out, and it usually works out to our benefit. So what I'm going to talk about is we're going to focus on a lot of the planning and preparation that we need in the land development process to be able to be successful on a project level. It's going to start out over on the engineer's side, and we're going to start, when these projects start to be designed and entitled through the city, you're going to start seeing how these projects, and you're going to start to get a vision for how they can come out of the ground and actually be created. And all of that starts with the construction documents, the engineer's estimates, and your budgets, and how it works on an overall scale. And so whether it works directly and 100% accurately with your first level pro forma on this, probably not. It's not going to be the same as what you thought it was going to be every time, but it will work. And so we'll cover all of these different phases as we go. But going in, what we need to focus on now, we've done a pro forma, we have our budgets in mind, we think we know what the project's going to cost, we think we know that the lots are going to develop out to a certain finished lot cost that works for our market, and we can build houses and take those through to the final steps where they're actually monetized either at a finished lot sale or a finished home sale, right? So from there, we've got to get through all these other steps. The other steps that we're talking about are contracts, pre-construction, site construction, and project management. So we're going to go step by step through this. And by the end of it, you'll have a better understanding of all of these different project phases and steps that we need to take. Part of that is going to be, you're going to be working with a lot of people in the land development space. It's going to start out pretty cozy. You and an engineer, you and the city planner, you and maybe the city engineer. You're going to start developing that relationship. But as you start to get your project kicked off and you start construction, you're going to start meeting a lot more people, okay? And so how those people fit into the process is going to be really important. And I'll show you the keys to successfully integrating all those new people into the process so that you don't miss a step. So let's get right into it. The first step to what our development process is going to be is we've got to prepare all our budgets and make sure that they're lining up with our project expectations. So what we're going to do is right out of the gate, we're going to start reviewing all of our original budgets and comparing them to how the project is shaping up. During due diligence, one of the best things, one of the most beneficial tools that we have during due diligence is our soils report. That should be the number one thing. Once you get a project under contract, that really should be the first thing you order, is a soils and environmental study. That will dictate almost everything that happens in the actual construction phase of your site, even though it's kind of a silent document that you just have to check a box to get. It's going to dictate how thick your pavement is going to be. It's going to dictate your road design as far as how much subgrade and everything else that you're going to do. It's going to dictate even down to the footing level of the homes that are going to be on these finished lots that you're going to create. So the soils report is really the number one key document that you're going to focus in on. And that's going to impact everything else. It's going to have a domino effect through your budgets and through your schedules and everything else. To speak to that a little bit, Steve and I did a project out in Eagle Mountain once, and when we went into it, we knew we were going to hit some hard rock excavation. And we knew that because we analyzed the soils report. And we even did additional borings and digs to try and map out exactly where the hard rock was going to be on this site and where we could expect to have problems. And all of that work that we put in up front helped us get a better picture of how the process was going to go. And it actually also helped us on the budgeting side to be prepared for some of the additional costs of hard rock excavation and some of the additional schedule implications of what that hard rock excavation was going to do. What it effectively did is kind of divided the project into two phases. One lower phase that didn't have the hard rock excavation, and then one upper phase where we could kind of slow pace the cul-de-sac where this rock existed. And it helped us keep the project moving, even though it was still very challenging to get that construction done in the hard rock. But it all came from the soils report. So we're going to compare that soils report with the construction drawings that have been now approved and revised through the city process. And that's going to give you a picture. You're going to start to be able to visualize all the things that are going to need to happen for this project to be developed. So as we go through the construction drawings, we're going to start marking them up. I like to take on my construction drawings, and I take the blue stake colors and I mark up the plans with showing all the different pipes and underground utilities that I have to build. And I'll do a green highlighter across the sewer and show where that goes. And then I'll draw usually an orange or a yellow dashed line around any problem areas for soils that are outlined in my soils and geotechnical study, right? If there's an environmental concern, it's going to be outlined in the environmental phase 1 or the soils report, maybe both. And so I've had environmental studies that have come back with existing underground gasoline tanks that need to be removed and then mitigated. And so you'll start to map those out on your construction drawings and kind of add that into the scope and visualize what you're going to need to do to solve all those problems. So as you review the construction drawings, really what you're trying to do is visualize how this project's going to come together. That's where the super smarts and the 3D modeling in your brain is going to start to happen. And you're going to start trying to visualize how exactly you're going to take a bite out of this elephant and get it figured out. So Once you're reviewed your construction drawings, you should know those at least as good as your engineer, maybe better. And you definitely want to know them well enough to answer all the questions that you're going to have as you bid these out to contractors. And so you need to be considering that when you're reviewing these construction drawings. Construction drawings are intimidating the first few times you see them, but there's basically two sets of construction drawings within the set. There's two styles of construction drawings. There's a plan view, and then there's a profile view, right? The plan view is like a drone shot from above. It's the 30,000 feet looking down. This is the way the shape of the streets is going to be, the pattern of the roadways, and everything like that. Then the profile sheet is going to be kind of a halfway cut through the center line of each street, and it's going to show you and help you visualize in 3D what elevation steps are going to be within your project and what you need to do to be able to build the project. So as you visualize those two steps, those two types of plans, you're going to start to get a better picture of how this thing comes out of the ground. Now, you're also going to add into your budget some of the city fees and soft costs and finalize that. Hopefully in your original pro formas and your original spreadsheets for your budgets, you had some of those just allocated maybe as a 10% of your project cost or something like that. But now you're going to start to know those. The city's going to outline a fee schedule. They're going to tell you what their inspection fees are going to be so that you can pay for your city inspection fees. They're going to tell you what the water fees are going to be required, how much water you're going to have to deliver with the project to record the plat, whether your culinary water impact fees are paid at plat recording or maybe they're paid during the building permit. Every city's a little different on that stuff. So, but you're going to start outlining all those fees, and you're going to start asking questions with the city staff about when those fees and soft costs are paid. And specifically, I'm talking about impact fees. Not all of your impact fees are paid at building permits. Some of those are paid at the plat level, depending on which city you build in. You're going to talk about water dedication, how much water you have to go out and buy, either from the city if they sell it or from private individuals, and that has become a pretty hot topic in Utah. I'm sure all of you are aware of the challenges in Eagle Mountain right now. It's pretty hard to find water for developments. The city stopped selling it about a year ago, and we don't know when or if they will start selling it again. So it's been on us as a development community to go out and find that water available privately from individuals who own it. You're going to start putting in those soft costs and fees and make sure that it still works with your project. This is where you've got to start looking at your Bruce Wayne wallet and see if you have enough money to finish this project in the amount of money that you budgeted, with all of the new constraints that you're finding out about the finalized plans and all the city fees that you're preparing to pay. So that's where you're starting to visualize the budgets as well and whether or not they're going to fit within your original pro forma. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes you might have to readjust depending on, I know one project I did down in Santa Quin, the city came back and told us that we had to pioneer an extra half mile of sewer pipe that we didn't know about. And it was all 22-foot deep, large sewer pipe that we had to go and construct. It ended up costing $150,000, which is a lot of money. On the grand scale, the way we solved that was we made sure that it fit within the budget of the first phase, but we also applied some of that money across the rest of the phases because we knew that the sewer that we went off-site to go and get would pioneer the whole area and kind of unlock all the rest of the lots. And so by allocating it a little differently and booking that differently with our accountant, we actually overcame some of that cost to be able to make sure that each lot paid a little bit towards that instead of only the first phase, 30 lots had to bear the brunt of that extra $5,000 a lot. So that helps. So you've got to take a global look at what your budget is coming in at, and you can make adjustments with your management team from there and your ownership group to make sure that your Bruce Wayne funds are still intact. Okay? All right. This is also an important step. You're going to start to think about who you're going to get to build this for you. So one of the things that I like to do is if I don't have somebody in mind that's already been a proven excavator in that area, I'll start reaching out to somebody that I know, maybe the city engineer that you're now pretty close with because you've been working with the city engineer or the city planner for a couple months on the entitlement. You can ask them for referrals. Who has done a good job building subdivisions in your city? And it could be different for different cities. Up in Heber, I did a project once, and I had a contractor all teed up and ready to go. And I started talking to the city engineer, and he kind of hinted that maybe there would be a different contractor that might be better for that area. And he told me about a project that they were doing right next to mine where they hit some unexpected soils conditions that didn't show up on my soils report. And so by asking for a referral on who did a good job in his city, it actually helped me take a look again at my soils report and take a look at my construction design. And I adjusted both the contractor based on his feedback, and I adjusted a line item in my budget to prepare for some of those unexpected soils conditions. If you've ever developed a lot in Heber, down in the flat area of Heber, they have what they call pot rock up there. And it's essentially, it's a mineralized concrete type, naturally occurring concrete almost, that is really only in Heber. There's no other place like it in Utah. But in Heber and Midway, you can run into this pot rock, and it's basically like trying to dig through concrete. So you'll get down a few feet, and you'll think everything's going great, and then all of a sudden you'll hit this layer of really hard rock, and it feels like concrete. And when you break it apart, it almost looks like a calcified form of naturally occurring concrete. And so through that referral process, I was able to kind of adjust what I was going to do, and we still had a successful outcome because we prepared for the eventuality that we would hit that rock. What it really meant is I hired the right contractor that knew what to do in that situation, where before I had slated a contractor that was from the Wasatch Front side, the west side, that wasn't familiar with that pot rock in Heber. And so if he would have hit that, it would have caused us delays in trying to find the right contractor and the right tools to get through that pot rock. And when we did hit that, the contractor that the city engineer referred me to did a great job. We didn't skip. We probably lost 2 days on our overall schedule. He brought in a different piece of equipment and immediately started moving through the modified process that we almost expected we would hit, thanks to the referral from the engineer. So this is a really valuable tool. Like I've said before, land development, home building, home sales, all this sounds pretty big, pretty daunting from how am I going to do this type of project. But if you reach out within your network and the people that you meet along the way, I promise you there's somebody there that can help you. And so if you take anything from today's presentation, my number one thing is one of the superpowers that we need to be better at is our network and helping each other, and also asking for help and looking for that support within our network. Steve, you have a question?
Not a question, but I totally love what you're saying, because I've navigated so many political aspects by asking questions and referrals from the municipal group that I'm working with, because they have a comfort level and a familiarity with certain groups, and that makes the process all the more smooth. So I totally appreciate and agree 100% with what you're saying, that relationships can go a long way. The right relationships can go a long ways in getting you through problems and navigating the political lay.
Yeah, great. That's a great comment. And I'll tell you one other cool story on that pot rock story in Heber. Having the right contractor even saved me money. And I came in under my original budget without the pot rock budget, because the contractor that I selected based on the referral from the city engineer knew exactly what to do with that pot rock. And what he did is he used a rock saw to go through the pot rock. And he basically used a different tool that's not very commonly used in Utah. And he used carbide bits, like a giant skill saw, to saw through all my trenches and basically pre-trench everything. And the cool thing was, once he did that, he showed me that we could actually use the millings from that process for the backfill, because when you mill the pot rock, it becomes almost the best substrate and species for backfilling that material, it's as good as road base. And so I was able to go back to the city and say, hey, we're going to use the pot rock millings to save on import for the project. And so the additional cost of milling the streets and the trenches through this hard material actually ended up saving me money overall. And it all pointed back to asking a simple question of a city engineer: who's done a good job for you building subdivisions in your city? So that's a super valuable tool. All right, so once we get there, we're going to start reaching out to contractors, and we're going to start requesting construction proposals. Now, when you're getting construction proposals, it's not just the excavator. You've also got to get a surveyor lined up. That might be somebody that's already tied to your engineer, or it might be an outside surveyor. That's not every engineer has a surveying department. Not every engineer has a staff surveyor. So you might have to reach out and source that separately. If you ever need anything like that, again, refer to your network. Somebody in your network is going to know, hey, this guy is going to be a good surveyor for you in that area. Or this other engineering team has a surveyor and they do outside contract work even if they didn't design your subdivision. So you can request those proposals and you can get the right people involved in the proposal contracts so that you can set the project up to not have any delays. So you're going to request bids from your excavator, your surveyor, and also your materials testing. You've got to make sure that your soils engineer, usually I go back to the same guy that I got the original soils study from. The geotechnical engineer that gave me the soils report originally can usually handle the testing too. And so I'll go back and request that. And then I'll once I get those proposals back, we'll start putting those budgets together. So what I'm talking about here, this slide shows you, this is the top 5 most valuable, these are the top 5 most valuable things that you need to rely on in the bidding process. These are going to answer most of your questions. Your excavator will, if he's a good excavator, will ask you all these questions. He will ask you for a soils report. He'll ask you for CAD drawings so he can put it into his takeoff software or his modeling that shows how deep and how much grading he has to do. He'll ask you for all this stuff if he's qualified. If it's a really small project and a really small contractor, he might not ask you for things like the CAD drawings and he might do it old school. And that's fine too. It just depends on the size and scope of your project, right? So you're going to adjust these, but these 5 things should be the main thing that you're going to rely on. This fifth one is kind of optional. Most people don't do this, but I have learned from mistakes that this is a super important one that you should not skip. During the construction proposals, so when you're bidding your subdivision out, I think it's a great idea, and I use this as a best practice for every subdivision I do. I have my surveyor go out and do centerline staking in the roadways at every 50 or 100 feet, depending on the size of the project. If it's a small project, I'll do a tighter spacing on the streets. If it's a huge project, I'll get less stakes. But what I'm looking for there is I want him to put stakes down on site, because the stakes will tell you, and if you don't know how to read a stake, a survey stake is sometimes complicated, but there's a trick to it. And if you don't know the trick, ask your surveyor. Say, hey, I want to be on site when you're staking this, and you walk me through what that stake says and what it really means. And the reason I like to do this in my the things I rely on during the construction phase, bidding phase, the reason I like to do this is that visualization. I have gone through projects where I didn't do this, and then later I found that the streets were set too high or too low. And depending on which of those scenarios you have, it could really affect how your finished lots build out with the houses, what kind of discount you have to give to a builder because of export on each lot if they're buying your finished lots, or as a builder, how much export you're going to have to haul off with your super strength, right? Super strength isn't cheap. You need a Bruce Wayne wallet for that. So this centerline staking is a best practice that all of us should do during development. And you simply get your surveyor out to survey the center lines of your roads. And what you're looking for is you're looking in relation to the existing ground, how far are you going to dig that street up or down from the existing ground. The reason that matters is because up here, I've done a few of these subdivisions up in Traverse Mountain. On all of those, the center line tells you one thing, but if you're on a slope, the center line of a road that's 70 feet wide, a right-of-way, it might be totally different on this side of the slope than it is on this side of the slope. See what I'm saying? So once we survey this center line, we're going to start to really see how our subdivision's coming together. If we're out in parts of West Jordan or Eagle Mountain where it's flatter and we don't have as much slope to deal with, great. It's pretty easy. We just center line stake those, see how it's all working out, and we double check our measurements to make sure that we're not going to either haul off too much material or have to retain a lot of material out over hillside and sloped edges. Does that make sense? Question?
At what point in time do you order that centerline stake after your construction documents are totally done?
Correct. So the question was, at what point do we order the centerline staking as a best practice? And it's after your construction drawings are stamped, during your bidding process, and prior to your pre-construction meeting. But it's probably about the same time as all of that, because all that stuff, generally what happens is your entitlement takes way longer than you thought, and you're coming through the city and you're like, oh, I was supposed to be done with my entitlements in April. It's now June. I got to get going, because if I'm going to get this subdivision built before the winter hits, I got to start now. And so by June, you're putting the construction proposals together. You're rushing to get a contractor lined up. You're rushing to get your city meeting, your pre-construction meeting set up. And so it could be all of that. It could be during all of that. But it's certainly once your phases are entitled through the city and you know what you're going to have to build. And that's when you want to finalize it. Because the other thing that develops there is, depending on if you want to make a change there, depending on the city you work in, you probably have to go back and ask for permission to change some of those grades. Usually if you're adjusting within a foot of your proposed grades that you originally got approved, most cities can adjust to that and you can tie into existing streets just fine. But if you make a major change here, you might have to go back to the city and say, hey, we staked this and it looks a little off and we want to make some adjustments, so you've got to go back to your city and find out. So you want to do that pretty early, honestly. Does that make sense? Okay, this is the interlude. After you start getting your proposals back, you're going to start doing all of your number crunching. And really what you're looking for here is the sanctity of your Bruce Wayne wallet. You're trying to protect that. And you want to make sure that you have enough money to finish this project once you get started. So this part is pretty simple. You're going to compare your bids to your budgets. You're going to request schedules from each bidder and make sure that those schedules still work with what your project timelines were expected to be. And then you're going to go through and discuss things, contract-specific things, with the people that you're going to award these contracts to. So you're going to discuss with your excavator, hey, I've got a construction loan on this, a land development loan, which don't exist anymore. So you're probably really working with a Bruce Wayne wallet somewhere. But if you do have a bank loan for development, which isn't common anymore, but could be, you're going to discuss when he needs to turn in his invoices and when he needs to work with you on construction draws, how often you're going to be willing to do that. Some contractors want to do a monthly billing. That's usually preferred. And if your project isn't too big, that usually works with most people. Some other projects might be so big that you might do a payment every week or something like that. But this is where you discuss that. After your bids are in, you're going to discuss how payments are going to happen. And you're going to discuss timing of what to expect from these contractors. You're also going to discuss any holdback or retention and the lien waiver process that you're going to hold the contractor to. Holdback and retention are really important. We don't do it enough in the industry, in my opinion. And I'll tell you another story from that same project that Steve and I did in Eagle Mountain. We had a pretty good contractor out there, but he had a new foreman that was kind of a cowboy, maybe a maverick, I don't know. But he wanted to do things his way. And so instead of waiting on survey stakes, he wanted to go through and do the water line. He thought he knew enough about the streets to do the water lines with a set specified grade from existing grade. And so lo and behold, he goes in and puts in all the water lines at the grade he thought they should be put in instead of ordering survey stakes. And we didn't catch it. Steve and I didn't see that he hadn't ordered his water survey. And so he went in and installed 1.5 miles of water line that was too shallow in a lot of places because he wasn't accounting for some of the dips and adjustments that the road's finished surface did. And so thankfully, we had quite a bit to go on payments with that contractor, and we had enough that to hold him accountable and make him go back and adjust that. But had we not had any holdback or retention or progress payments that were still outstanding, that contractor could have just walked away and said, hey, your problem, not mine, right? And then you're paying to do that work again. So holdback, if you ask me for what the appropriate holdback is, it's probably somewhere in the range of 5% of your contract amount. That would be a great place to start. Most of the time on a development project, your budgets are going to be anywhere from $1 to $20 million for a phase of development, depending on how big it is. 5% is usually a big enough holdback to get their attention, but not be too painful. These excavators don't work off large margins, they work off volume. And so if you get too high on your retention, they might push back on that. But now's the time to discuss it, right? Before you sign the contract, you want to outline all of those things. And I would strongly urge you to put in a 5% retention if you can get it, because it will help you keep your contractor accountable throughout the whole project. And you would hold that retention until you get into warranty with the city. Because the other thing that I haven't talked about yet is that every development that we do, if you finish the lots and you're the developer, you get the privilege of guaranteeing those improvements for 1 year to the city. And you give those improvements to the city for free. So all of that is a pass-through that you gift to the city, and you gold plate it for them by providing a 1-year warranty. So that holdback or retention needs to be discussed now. You're also going to talk about lien waivers. All of these contractors now use the state construction registry, and I'll talk about that a little bit right now. The state construction registry is basically where they go to file their pre-lien notices. If you're not familiar with that program, the state has a good website. We'll skip to that right here. If you go to this web address right here on the lower right-hand portion of this slide deck, and if you want the slide deck, I've given it to Steve, and he can send that out as collateral too, so you guys can have all this. This is just my brain, how it works in a slide presentation, but it outlines, there's nothing proprietary in here, so you're all welcome to this information. But if you go to this website, there's a good video about how the state construction registry works. Basically, in Utah, it is illegal to file a lien without notifying the property owner that you have the lien rights, right? So Utah requires that you file first a pre-lien notice that you're going to do work on the site. So if I'm a contractor or a supplier, I have lien rights on the property that I work on. So if I'm the excavator, when I had an excavation company, I would go out and I would send in my pre-lien notification to the state construction registry. And that notifies the property owner that there's the right that I have to go and lien the project for the amount of work or product that I supply to that project. Because ultimately it's on the property owner to pay for that work. Does that make sense? So the state construction registry is basically a list of all the people that put pre-lien notices on your property. And in this video, it shows you how to do a complicated search, how to create your own account, how to log your specific parcel number. That's your piece of land with the county recorder's office. They'll give you the tax ID number, basically. And you'll go in and look up your piece of property, and you'll be able to see everybody that has filed a pre-lien notice. The reason that is important is when you deliver a progress payment to your general contractor, say you hire general contractor, JJ Bush or somebody, you're going to hire those guys, and they're going to start ordering materials from Geneva Pipe. They're going to start ordering core and main underground materials. They're going to start ordering road base from Staker Parsons, right? They're going to start ordering delivering this stuff to your site. You're going to start seeing those pre-lien notices pile up on the state construction registry. And you should pay attention to those, because when you deliver a payment to a contractor, you need to think about what you're paying for, what specific part of his budget that you're paying for. And we'll just go back through that now because it'll help us visualize that. So if we go back to our original budget, well, let's go to this. This is an example of a project bid. When I send it out to bid, this is the other thing that you might find useful. When I send it out to bid, I'll usually fill out a project template that shows them the blanks to fill in. And this usually starts from the engineer. So a lot of times I'll request this engineer's estimate that will outline the quantities of material and pipe that go into constructing this subdivision. They might charge you $150, $200 to prepare this engineer's estimate, but they'll go through and fill in how many linear feet of pipe, or you can do your own takeoff. But I'll fill in a project bid template so that they know where I started from and what my expectation was. And when they do their own takeoff, if they get something different, it's really easy to compare their notes to mine. And then I'll be able to see where they're different and be able to compare, why is your bid higher in this area or something like that, right? But it all starts here. And then their invoicing usually mimics this. It'll usually mimic how their bid comes back. And so say they turn in an invoice for sewer. Well, we know that at the sewer stage, they're going to have pipe that they had to buy. They're going to have manholes that they probably bought from a different supplier. And they're going to have some gravel to bed that pipe with Staker Parsons or Geneva or one of the gravel pits. They're going to have all this material, and you're going to go down your list of pre-lien notifications, and you're going to say, okay, I'm going to pay you for this section, and you're billing me $1.8 million for the sewer. I'm going to joint check you along with Staker Parsons and the pipe supplier, Core and Main, and the Old Castle precast for your manholes and stuff like that. You're going to go down through the list and think about who you need to pay along with that excavator. Because like Ronald Reagan, we want to trust but verify, right? We want to trust that our contractor is going to be good, but we also want to verify that the project costs are paid, because the lien goes to us, not the excavator, not the general contractor. So we need to protect our interests and make sure that those lien notices match up with our progress payments, and that's very important. So you're either going to request a lien waiver as a condition of him picking up the check, your general contractor, or you're going to just straight up joint check them. And they're going to have to get the gravel company or the pipe supplier or the precast concrete company to endorse that check for them to cash it and get $1.8 million, right? And this has come up. I've had contractors pocket the money and not pay their suppliers. And it is a super painful process to go and unravel that, because the supplier doesn't care. He provided the materials. He did his part. And he expected to be paid for those materials. So then you go back and you ask him to take a discount or something for materials you're punishing the wrong person in that instance. Does that make sense? And it can all be avoided if you require the proper lien waivers or do a joint check to that individual. If you don't know how to do a joint check, ask your bank. They will help you through the process. Any bank knows how to do them. Your accountant probably has done them in the past. If you have an accountant or a bookkeeper, there's somebody in your network that knows how to do this, but it's for your protection. All right, so once you've got all that stuff discussed, you're going to go through and you're going to award the project. But you're also going to do that after you compare all your bids. And I've got this in the collateral that Steve's going to send out to you. So the assets that you'll walk away with today are examples of this. And you'll see this is a bid comparison spreadsheet that I did. And you probably see that I didn't do anything fancy here. I just took my bid template and I copied and pasted 3 more, however many more bidders that I sent it out to, and then I input their rows, right? And I make sure that their rows are comparable in scope to the other rows. And then I'll notate, like here, you can see I've got some of these cells highlighted. And what I'm notating there is differences in price or quantity that may have affected their difference in price for the overall scope of that particular line item. So contractor A is looking really good on the rough grading, right? 73 grand compared to 118 and 124. We're liking contractor A. But then look what happens when we get down to the other line items. Contractor A starts to lose some ground to the other 2 contractors, right? And so your overall bid might come back and look who's low. Contractor B all of a sudden looking pretty good. Contractor C, he might be the guy to go with. You're going to find that out when you're comparing all of this. I like to put it in this spreadsheet just to help my sanity so that I'm not missing something as I'm highlighting separate bids and things like that. And you'll also notice one more thing. As we look at this, I added 2 columns here that show average price and average quantity. See that? And that's important too, because then I understand what range these people are coming in. What's the middle ground? You know, what can I expect if something did change on quantities? What would that be as an impact to everybody else? And we've got a couple comments, so I'll let Steve was up first.
Yeah, I just want to go along with what Cam's saying here. Like, everybody has their own process, and to get apples for apples and not apples for oranges, I need to be the one that's driving. Because if I let them drive, they're all going to drive differently, which makes this comparison process really, really hard. And so, again, I love and appreciate a lot of what Cam's saying and his willingness to send you his template and his process to be able to help you do that. What I do when I go to bid, just the same, is I drive. I give them the template and I say, hey, this is what I want you to bid on, so that they come back with their bids on that. And then I go to the next person with the same thing. That way I can make sure that I'm not getting apples and oranges all mixed up, but rather I'm getting apples for apples. So I appreciate you saying that.
Yep. We had a question or a comment here. We'll wait for the mic. We'll go right 2 rows back and then we'll come to you.
So my question was, as you're evaluating these 3 competitors, right, are you also going to then kind of overlay that with conversations you've had with the city engineer and all these other things and kind of readdress that, like who works well with the city? Or would you say you've already weeded out those things? Like,
it depends.
Yeah.
The answer is yes. I'm going to request feedback all the way through the process. And if I'm feeling really good that contractor C is the low bidder and he's looking really good on the bids, or she is looking really good on the bids, right? Then I'm going to go back and I'm going to go back to my network. If it's the city engineer or my project engineer or a referral that I know, that I got that referral from, I'm going to go back and try and find out and do some vetting if I haven't worked with that contractor in the past. Yeah. And so now's the time to do it. You're going to dial in through this comparison process. You're really narrowing down your focus on who you're going to go with. And during that process, you're going to want to interview them and get to know them, and also make sure that everybody else feels good about that's involved. I've worked way too long in the industry, so I know a lot of inspectors personally, and I'll call them, city inspectors, and be like, hey, I'm thinking about going with this guy. Did they do a good job on their last project with your city, or did their quality fall off since I used them last, or something like that? She's going to hand you a mic.
Thank you. I've learned from sad experience that sometimes the cheapest contractor or subcontractor is actually more expensive due to it could be a number of reasons, like taking longer or doing poor quality work that I need to pay someone else to redo their work. How do you I know you just touched on this a little bit, just barely. How do you make sure that you're choosing the best guy for the job and having budget in mind?
Yeah, that's a great point. And there are instances where I don't pick the lowest bidder. That happens more often than you would think. And the process for that is a combination of experience and reputation and, maybe a referral too. And like, I'll tell you, here's a good example of that. I went with a contractor in a project I did in Phoenix 2 years ago. And when we went and did this comparison process, we wanted to see, we did not know these guys at all. They were in a totally different market from us. And so as I started to narrow down the two guys that I thought were kind of the two best for both, and along with this spreadsheet, the other thing that you've got to take into consideration now is, I don't know if I have it in this section or this one, but during the bid process, you're also going to be requesting this schedule. And this is also included in the stuff we're going to give you today. But during this bid comparison, you're also going to be comparing schedule. If you've got a really small contractor that his price is super small, and he might be the most compelling value as far as dollars go, what if his schedule is 2 months longer or 3 months longer, and that puts you in a window where you might not pave this year? Well, then you're waiting till April the next year, right? And so now's the time to start asking all those questions. So going back to that Phoenix contractor, we started narrowing it down to 2 people that we thought were looking pretty good, and we started to dial in these overall numbers, and we started to ask questions from people we knew about what those contractors could really deliver. And you know what else we did? We asked those excavators, those contractors, to tell us, what are some projects that I can go visit that you're doing now or that you recently completed, and I'm going to go walk them, and I'm going to go see what your process is like. And so this is the time to start doing all of that due diligence. Both of your comments are super relevant in that space. Now is the time to start vetting your contractor. Before you sign a contract with them, you really should feel really good about how these contractors are going to deliver your site on time and on budget. If you interview another developer that used them and they say, their schedule was great, but I got this huge change order, because they had to keep going and they wanted to go fast, and then I paid for it in the end, right? And then you're going to take that into consideration. So it's going to be different for every project that you do, but it's no less relevant, and you've got to start comparing all of that.
Have you found it more important to hire someone that's local to that area, that's in that town or city, that rather than getting someone from here to drive an hour or 2 away just to get there, stuff like that?
Yeah, I would call that falls within the 80% rule. Generally, it's better to find somebody local that knows that particular area that you're going to be developing in, rather than trying to introduce somebody new into a process. There are exceptions to that, but generally, if you've got a contractor that has done work for you in Eagle Mountain and they did a good job, they're probably going to do a good job in Eagle Mountain again. But that contractor might not be the right guy to take with you to the project that you're doing in Payson, right? That's a little bit different market, different city for sure, and it could be a totally different experience with that same excavator. I did a project once in Santaquin that went pretty good with the contractor, and I took them 2 cities over and did another project in Salem, and it did not go well. I almost had to fire that contractor just so that he could get along with the city and replace them midstream, and that would not have been an easy process. But the end result was that he had such a hard time working with that city, that particular contractor, that those delays were pushed to me in my project schedule. And so I had to help referee that to some degree. And so proceed with caution if you're getting an outside excavator or an outside general contractor that hasn't worked in that area before.
Yeah, it seems like it's a challenge because you're getting to know someone you've never worked with too at the same time. So.
Yep, exactly. And that's where you're going to rely on your network. And your network can include the people that you've recently added to your network in the city that you're working in in the, you know, the staff that you're doing business with every day. You're going to find out new people that will help you through that comparison process. So all of that is valuable, but you need to do it before you award the contract and sign a binding contract on this stuff. All right, so we've already talked about most of this. And basically, like we've said, you're going to start analyzing all of this, who is the best fit. And at the end of it, you're going to award the contractor that you feel like is the best fit for your project. It doesn't matter who has the shiniest bulldozers. It does not matter who shows up in the nicest project truck or even the dirtiest project truck. It doesn't matter. You're going to make adjustments to how you vet that contractor, and you're going to pick the right contractor that meets all the criteria that you've outlined. And it's all coming from those 5 high priority documents and pieces of information that you're using during the bid process. Does that make sense? So very complicated, but this is where the rubber meets the road. Now you're going to sign a contract with an excavator or a general contractor, and you're going to start working on delivering this, the project schedule. You can see this project schedule is really simple. It's a Gantt chart that's made in Excel. You guys can adjust this. I've cleaned up the formatting for this presentation. The one I give you is a little bit more detailed in the Excel spreadsheet. But like I said, nothing proprietary here. We're just trying to fill in the details of when this project can go. You're going to notice that sequentially we're going to work through some of the initial grading on the site. We're going to get it roughed in for where the streets go. And then we're going to immediately switch and we're going to start doing underground utilities. And we're going to work from deepest to shallowest utilities when we develop a site. So we're always going to start generally with the gravity-fed utilities first that are the deepest. And usually that's our sanitary sewer lines. So those are sealed sewer systems that feed off of gravity. They're usually at specified slopes for miles and miles, and they go to a sewer plant hopefully very far away from your project and eventually gets processed there, right, for release later. So you're going to start with your sewer main, and then usually your water main is next. You're going to do that next because it's sequentially the second deepest utility. And then you're going to go through storm drain or right here, water services, or maybe your pressurized irrigation. You might have to add some rows in here if you've got a city that you do pressurized irrigation. I can tell you pressurized irrigation in Utah will one day go away. Every single water company I've talked to does not like providing it, and they can't charge for it as much as it costs them to maintain systems and stuff. And so eventually it's all going to be culinary, and we're going to have to be more prudent about how we use the water in Utah. Does that make sense? And that's going to help us with some of our Eagle Mountain water shares that we need to have in the future. So if you can either do away with pressurized irrigation in the city entitlement process or at least minimize the impact of that, I would suggest doing that with your cities, because eventually it's all going to go away. And I think they're going to go to all culinary system based on the feedback that I've gotten from water companies. So once you award the project, you're really just going to start focusing on your schedule, when you can start. And that's going to start with your pre-construction checklist. Now you've got signed contracts, and you're going to start hiring people to actually build the site and get them out on the site to do things. Usually the city will not let you have a pre-construction meeting until you have the stormwater pollution prevention set up. Stormwater pollution prevention is an important part of our industry. It keeps the dirt and the mud and the silt out of our storm drains and out of our creeks and rivers and lakes, so that those stay clean for generations to come. One of the first things you'll have to do is hire a consultant to do your SWIP plan, your stormwater planning, and you're going to actually start setting up some of your stormwater prevention, pollution prevention. So you're going to put stuff like silt fence where it's required. Maybe it's a berm or a trench that interrupts the flow of silt across your property so that it can't escape the site. You're going to put in track out pads, concrete washouts, stuff like that. But usually you have to have that set up before you can do a pre-con with the city. And so that's an important step. If you call the city and say, hey, can we have a pre-con? One of the first things they're going to say is, well, do you have your SWIP set up yet? I haven't seen it come across the state system, because they have to approve all those, the cities do. And so you're going to have to do this. So just be prepared. If you ever need a consultant, there's lots of them out there. Contact your network or me. We'll get you in touch with the right people that can help you. Usually they can react pretty fast. I've got a couple of consultants that can turn around a SWIP plan from a set of construction drawings in less than 24 hours. There's a state template that makes it pretty seamless, and you can get your plan uploaded and approved by the state, pay your fees. Within a couple days, you can be ready for your pre-con. So not as complicated as it seems, but it is a necessary step. Once you get your pre-construction meeting scheduled, you'll meet there. The people that are going to be at your pre-construction meeting are your surveyor, your engineer, and your city inspector. Surveyor is optional. They don't come to every pre-con. And your general contractor will be there every time. And at the pre-construction meeting, you're going to talk about really boring stuff, like what kind of a water service fitting that you're going to bury in the ground 5 feet deep for every lot you build, right? And you're going to be discussing things that you don't want to know about, like whether you're going to get a Mueller or a Ford brand fitting, or whether or not you can source your manhole covers from India, or whether they have to be made in America. That kind of stuff comes up at the pre-con. And so be patient at the pre-con, ask the appropriate questions, and make sure you get a standards book or access to the city's standards book so that you can comply with how the city is going to make you build their streets that you get to gift them for free. So great job, developers. You're building cities. You didn't know that, but you did know that. So at the pre-construction meeting, you're going to get all that detail. They're going to tell you how they want their manholes. They're going to tell you how they want their lids. They're going to tell you how they want their sewer boards marked, and whether or not they're going to GPS themselves. A lot of cities now will send a GPS device out with their city inspector, and they'll GPS and map out every single water service, every single sewer lateral, every single storm drain box, everything that you build, they'll go out and map out. Most of the cities do that now. So you're going to talk about how you're going to coordinate that. Usually you want to push most of that to your general contractor, because you don't want to be the one that forgets to schedule the city inspector to come out and GPS your water lateral, and now you can't backfill it. Now your excavator is after you because you didn't call the city inspector over to GPS that water service, and you can't backfill it. So most of that stuff, you're just going to put everybody on the same page as to who's doing what at the pre-construction meeting, and you're going to discuss those kind of things. If they say something you don't understand or you've never come across, do not be afraid to raise your hand. Wait a minute, that doesn't sound familiar to me. Will you please explain that a little bit more so I can make sure we do it right? That's usually my go-to. And I have long since given up the idea that I know anything, let alone everything. So I'll ask questions probably more than some people would like me to, and that's a good thing. All right, so once we get the pre-construction meeting, you're going to start going out maybe simultaneously with your pre-construction meeting, and you're going to do your job site preparation. For some land development projects that might be located next to other things, you might want to do more than some developers do on a empty field in the middle of nowhere, right? For instance, I've got a development coming up with Flagship. We're doing one right by a school in Lehigh. And so we're going to do some perimeter fencing around there to make sure that the kids stay off of our construction site, because kids and bulldozers don't mix. Actually, they have a ton of fun in the right environment on bulldozers, but that's another story for another day. We don't want them on the site or to be put in the place of harm or danger. So job site preparation, you're going to start working on, hey, do I need to put a rental fence around this? And they're, United Rental and American Fence, and there's all kinds of companies that you can rent fence from and put in a secure perimeter around your project so that nobody gets hurt and you control the access to the site. You're going to start analyzing your site plan and making sure that you have the construction entrances and traffic plans that the city is going to like. And a lot of times during the pre-construction meeting, They might ask you where your trucks are coming in and out. They might ask you what your haul routes are, where you're going to have big trucks moving through neighborhoods and stuff like that. They might ask you to stay off of a street altogether and I've had cities ask us to do a dirt road that's a temporary road that bypasses neighborhoods altogether. All those things can be discussed, and then you're going to have to adjust at your job site preparation. You're going to have to adjust that and make sure that you do it in a way that's you're being a good neighbor to everybody around you. Does that make sense? During that, you're going to think about all the traffic and potential site concerns. I've had projects where one time I had to shut down. I actually love doing it, but I shut down the road in front of the IRS building in Ogden, and nobody could get in or out of that. And that just, for some reason, made me feel good. Yeah. And so you're gonna talk through with the city all of those traffic concerns and any sort of traffic interruptions that you're gonna cause to the surrounding neighborhoods and businesses, right? And you're gonna try and do that in a way that's courteous and respectful. The IRS guys, I did it on a weekend over a Labor Day holiday so that I could have enough time and they weren't worried. So it didn't really impact anybody, but still felt nice to shut it down. So anyways, so you're gonna think about all those things when you're setting up your site plan. And really this is the most important thing. You're really just focused on how to be a good neighbor. It takes a lot of disruption to build a neighborhood. Doesn't come from nothing. You can see up on the mountain, you can go to any of these developments up here. When they dig the sewer lines, they have giant mountains of dirt all over your site. And those things don't clean themselves up. And kids love dirt piles, right? I love dirt piles still. I'm just a big kid anyway. So you've got to figure out how to be a good neighbor as you're building these highly disruptive sites that you're going to basically dig all the way up and then start putting back together. So be a good neighbor, think through all the things that you're going to have to do to keep your site clean, organized, and moving forward, because that's the main thing. If you're not a good neighbor, I can promise you that you'll get stopped and called out for not being a good neighbor, and it will delay your project. So, all right, pre-construction activities continued. We've talked about all of this stuff. Material storage is always a big one. The materials that we put in subdivisions with are not small. They come in on semi-trucks, multiple semi-trucks. You've got manholes that weigh 6,000 to 10,000 pounds that have to be stored somewhere, giant concrete structures. So you're gonna have to find places to put those. So all that stuff will be handled in your job site preparation. Once you figure out where all that stuff goes, then you get the privilege of building and moving forward. So, like I said before, clearing and grading is the first step. Whether you have existing vegetation on your site, you're gonna have to take that into consideration. My first public home builder that I worked for was in Tucson, and we couldn't just clear the land. We couldn't, I did a project last year where it was an old peach orchard, and I just went in and bulldozed all the peach trees, hauled them away. Nobody said anything. Made me sad because I like peaches and I like orchards, but we had to do it to be able to clear the site and get everything prepped for homes that were going to go in there. But in Tucson, you wouldn't be able to do that. If there are plants in Tucson that existed, and this is probably more for a southern Utah, Cedar City in southern Utah, they do this, but they do a native plant analysis. And if you've got some cactus species or something that needs to be saved, they'll make you save those. And I've had to put acres of nurseries in where I take the materials, all the native plants, like in Tucson, you've seen the Wile E. Coyote cactuses and Roadrunner cactuses, right? That's called a saguaro cactus, and we had to save every single one that was feasible to save. And so what we would do is we had a company that would come in and they would dig up the saguaro cactus, put it over here in the sequestered side of our project where it didn't disturb anybody, and we put it in the nursery for 4 months. And then once we got the site done, then we could take those cactuses and move them throughout the subdivision and keep them on site. And we had to do it. We had to do that barrel cactus, saguaro cactus, ocotillo, all kinds of, mesquite trees, everything. And we had to account for everything. And if we damaged one, we had to replace it. So keep that in mind. If you do stuff outside of Utah or outside of the Wasatch Front, you might run into that. But generally, we can go in and clear and make sure that the houses will have enough space. But if you can keep some trees, that's sometimes a good feature to keep. I do a lot of projects up on the hill where if they've got some scrub oak or some cedars or something, I'll try and keep a bunch of those trees if they're not going to get in the way of the houses that are being built. And then you're going to start going through your underground utilities. And like I said before, deepest to shallowest. And once you get the underground utilities in, then you can start putting in your curb and gutter. And then you can start prepping your roads and pave your roads. In Utah, we're coming up to the deadline where past October 15th, most cities don't want you to pave their streets. Because like I said, we have to gift these subdivisions to the city in perfect condition and warranty for a year that they're not going to fall apart. So most cities won't let you pave past October 15th. In some cases, if the weather is holding out really, really good, they'll let you pave if it's 55 and rising and everybody's getting ready for Thanksgiving dinner, right? Sometimes you can get that done. But generally, you're going to have to pave before October 15th if you have a shot for the year. And past October 15th, if you don't get paved, you're waiting till April when the concrete and asphalt plants start running again. So you've got to think about that in your scheduling. After your curb and gutter and paving, then you can start doing your dry utilities. You can't just go and immediately start doing your sidewalk. If you do, the power company and the gas company will come and rip out all of your sidewalk. Ask me how I know. And so you need to make sure that you give space for those dry utilities to go in. And then after the dry utilities, your power and gas and your cable and all that stuff, your fiber optic lines, then you can do the sidewalk. And gas companies, we've only got one in Utah. Enbridge Gas does a good job, but they do things differently in Weber County and Davis County than they do in the rest of Utah. A lot of people don't know this, but in Weber and Davis County, the gas lines will usually go in the park strip between the curb and the sidewalk. And down here in Utah County and Salt Lake County, Enbridge likes to be behind sidewalk. I don't know why it's better in Davis and Weber County to do it that way, but that's what they let you do. So that kind of stuff, it'll come up in your design, and you'll have another meeting with Enbridge and Rocky Mountain Power or whoever your power company is. Spanish Fork has their own power company. Salem has their own power company. So you'll talk to those people and figure out what needs to be done to get your dry utilities in. But you can't do your sidewalk until your dry utilities are in. So that's an important thing to set expectations. Because if your builder wants to go in and start doing homes, he might not have sidewalks. If your plat's recorded and he can get building permits, that doesn't mean he'll have his sidewalks in and everything's ready. So you'll just have to make sure that you're adjusting to whatever that scheduled need is. And then after your sidewalks go in, we wrap everything up in a pretty bow, clean it all up, and have our city inspections. And that's when we try and get the city to accept the subdivision into warranty. And then we get the privilege of monitoring that subdivision for a year while every builder comes across and breaks all the sidewalk that you just spent lots of money and chips the curb and breaks your asphalt and all kinds of stuff. And then you get to go and a year revisit all that. So it's super fun. And you do it for free. So that's great. So that's an important process. And I've found that one of the most important processes, or one of the most important things to making this city inspection and acceptance happen, goes back to housekeeping. If the subdivision's clean, you've got the streets swept, everything's visible for the, and you can see all the sewer, water, and marker boards and stuff, the city usually is pretty easy on this kind of stuff. Generally, you can have a crack in a sidewalk and they're not going to ding you too bad unless that crack is lifting or separating past a materials specification that they outline in there. Remember that standards book I told you to get at the pre-construction meeting? That's where they outline exactly what they're going to make you tear out to get into warranty. So, but generally, if your site is pretty clean, you can get this inspection and acceptance process pretty easily. When you're building the site, I will tell you as an owner, it stresses me out every time there's heavy equipment and people working in the same space. And unfortunately, This has hit home twice this year. I've had people die on my site, and it is not a good thing. Everybody should go home at the end of the day from their job. And when you have to call somebody and tell them that somebody's not going home, it is not a good situation. So when you're building your sites, you want to be a second set of eyes, or maybe a third or fourth set of eyes regularly at that site to make sure that things are progressing safely and up to your expectations and standards. You're the owner of the project, and you've got to take real responsibility for how that project is being constructed. It's not just being a good neighbor. That's people working on your site to your benefit so that they can develop your project. So you've got to treat that very carefully. So just to talk about some of that stuff a little bit more, this is an example of a storm drain trench. This is concrete pipe. This manhole here probably weighs 5,000 or 6,000 pounds. And the process to install this, you can see you've got a guy in a trench, right? This actually looks like a really safe trench. And so if I drove by the site, I would not be alarmed by any of this. See how they've dug a bench? So they've got the main trench at the specified depth per the plan, but then alongside of the trench on both sides, they've taken out extra material so that that trench, if it did cave in, would not harm that individual that has to get in and out of that trench, right? So that's something to pay attention to as you see this kind of stuff. The more you do it, the more familiar you'll be with safety practices, but you need to watch for things, red flags. And some of the red flags come up when you're doing these 5 best practices. Frequent site visits, weekly progress meetings with your general contractor on site where you compare his schedule to what you expected to accomplish on the site during that time. And you're talking about things like process payments and lien releases and all that stuff. And like I said before, we're trusting them to do a good job, but we're verifying that they're actually doing a good job because it's our site, it's our land development project, and we're going to make sure that it goes well. And then as we're doing that, that comes into a whole separate career path. Like there are guys that are project managers that do this for a living. If you feel like you need additional support, if this project is too big or a daunting scope, there are people that do this for a living. And if your superpowers aren't adding up to whatever you need to develop this project or that project that you're contemplating, access your network. There's somebody there that can help you manage that will help you do a good job and make it a successful outcome. Project management encases all of this. It encompasses all of that stuff. You can read through the list, but all of this is stuff that you should either have experience with or feel comfortable learning. And if you don't feel comfortable learning all of these things to manage your project well, then I would raise a hand and ask for somebody that can come in and help you. Question in the back.
What's the cost, fair cost for a good project manager? There, 2 sets of eyes against something.
So the question is, what's a good comparable cost for a project manager that can professionally help you? And it has to adjust with the scope that you're requiring. So if it's a project that's going to take up 40 hours a week, full-time job, expect to pay the equivalent of a full-time salary for that person to be a competent manager of that site. Currently, most of the project managers I know make over 6 figures. The people that have the experience to manage a site professionally and know what they're looking for when they show up to a job site, they're gonna be in the 6-figure range, probably in the low to mid 6-figure range. And that's probably the expectation for a project that's complicated enough to demand most of their weekly attention. If it's a small project, that can be negotiated lower, right? If it's something that's not going to take up 100% of their time, then you discuss with that project manager what his suggested rate, and there could be some negotiation in that. It could be $3,000 a month. It could be $6,000 a month. It could be $3,000 a week. It just depends on what that project manager is going to do every day And as an owner, we're going to expect to pay them for the time that they're involved. And we're really buying their expertise, and we're buying their experience, renting it at least, right? And so we want to compensate them for that valuable experience and time that they're going to put on your project to your benefit. So I can tell you in the project management space, that rate is usually highly negotiable depending on the project and scope. Trenches are one of the most dangerous things on a job site. As we've talked about before, there's basically things to look for in your trench safety. This is not a safe trench, in case you're wondering. How tall do you think that guy is?
5'5".
Yeah, maybe he's 6 feet tall, maybe he's 5'5", somewhere in that range. If it's above his shoulders, no matter how tall he is, that's too deep for them to be in a trench without any sort of protection. This is what's called a trench box. This is a very large piece of solid steel on both sides, separated with pipes that are welded to each side, and they have pins that you can locate and adjust the overall width of that trench box. And this trench box goes in and it basically shores up the sides. You know, this is back when we're playing Minecraft and we're having to, you know, shore up all of our caverns and tunnels and everything. You're essentially creating that shored up tunnel without a top when you're doing these trench boxes. It prevents the sides from collapsing. A lot of people don't realize this, but a cubic yard of material, can I get some over-unders on how much that weighs? A 3 by 3 by 3 piece of material? Somebody said it. 1 ton. So a box of dirt this big, roughly, 3 by 3 by 3, weighs 2,000 pounds or more. And I don't know about you guys, but my super strength isn't quite up to that. So if you've got a guy in a trench and that trench collapses, there's going to be more than a ton of material that comes onto that person and they've got to deal with. And so you're going to want to make sure that if you see this, just say something. Your contractor's not going to get offended, especially if you say it, hey, I want all of you guys to go home tonight. Let's get a trench box on that. Or if they don't have a trench box on site, let's dig this down and shelf it. It's extra material, but it's going to be necessary to keep those people safe. And so you're going to look for that kind of stuff when you're on site. But I wanted to make sure that we saw both a bad example and a good example of what to expect. If it's over their shoulders, they really need to be in a protected trench or a trench that's shelved down lower. Because if that material comes in, think about if you were bending over to connect a pipe or put something together like this guy, and that material comes in, the lower that trench that caves in, the better, right? And so you want to just make sure that you're looking for that kind of stuff when you're out on your site. And then like anything, you can see we're wrapping up. This is a project really super blurry. I tried to get the most blurry photo that we could get without paying for it. Mission accomplished. So, but the curb is now in. Looks like they're prepping the road for pavement, and this project is coming to a completion. You know, then they're going to get in their dry utilities, put in their sidewalk, and then they'll be building houses in no time flat. But the only way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing, just like Walt Disney said. So as you guys go and do these land development projects, I promise you, you can be successful doing them. They seem intimidating, but really once you do one, you're ready to go, and you'll go and tackle some more. And you'll probably make some mistakes along the way, but you'll figure them out. And especially if you're accessing your network appropriately and asking for help along the way. But as with everything in life, an ounce of preparation is worth a pound of cure. And the more effort you put into the planning of your development, the more successful your project will be in minimizing delays and having a successful project outcome. And that's what I've got. Any questions? Okay, thanks everybody.
So we appreciate you, Cam, for taking a window here. And if you guys have questions, feel free to take some time to step aside with him. Again, like I said, our most important thought process here is to give individuals the chance to do something that they feel called to do. And I just understand that sometimes in life you encounter opportunities and you look at them and you're super intimidated. And I didn't have a trade background or a real estate background or construction or anything when I first started. And I just went after it, like you was saying. And I tried and I failed and I failed and I tried and I tried and I failed. And I committed that when I got in, right, because I wasn't going to sell myself short. And I knew that I had this quietness inside me telling me I needed to pursue this route. So I chased it. And when I achieved an entry point and was successful at doing this, I had committed that I was always going to make sure that those who were in the same situation as I was had a pathway in. And so that's what this Land Development Masterclass is all about. It's to get you guys the full understanding and comprehension on what land development is and what it requires, and also a network of individuals and people that you can reach out to and talk to, including me and my team, on any type of development questions. Trust me when I say that I started with all the crap, and the reason I did is because you have like your Lennars, your Boyers, your whatever, shout out to them. They have all the teams and the low-hanging fruit. And so I was left to try to play practice on sandboxes that were less than becoming, let's put it that way. It was the dirty of the dirt. It was the most encumbered politically. It was the most encumbered from the financial side to the soil side to the community side. So it's possible, like he's saying. And so to help with that, I've had a number of different things that we got going on here to try to pass back. One is these classes. So keep coming. We do them every first Wednesday of every month. And so look for those in your inboxes and connect with Kason if you didn't when you came in, so that he knows that you were here so that we can continue to invite you. But more importantly, he's got a lot of assets here and templates that we now have access to, that since you guys showed up, we're going to pass those along to your group, okay? To you, your connections and stuff like that, so you can understand how to bid, how to get a budget, how to take that budget and compare it, how to run a schedule on that. Those are all really important things when you're trying to figure this out. And now he's given you something that he's put together over years of his experience. So take advantage of that. The other thing that we have is we're putting all of this plus many other educational videos and information into a school. And we're doing that to try to be able to give back. That school is actually going to be a one-time fee of $10,000. And then it's going to have a monthly fee tied to it. And we're launching that, as well as I'm launching another tool. One of the other things that I committed when I came into the space is that I wanted an easier way for me to figure out how to be abundantly aware of opportunity, because it looked super scarce to me when I walked in. It's because I didn't have any network. I didn't have any connection. And so I started looking for tools that would help me find access into networks, help me find access into projects, help me find access into dirt, and understand what dirt is, like what I can actually potentially do on that. When I did that, I couldn't find anything. And so I was not smart enough to not know that trying to build something through software is complicated, right? And so then I started doing that years ago, and I've spent millions of dollars in trying to put this tool together. We're going to launch that. We've used it selfishly for ourselves internally. And we've had beta users as well on it helping us. Cameron, I see you. Scott, he's one of the beta users for us. Shout out to him and super gratitude. I have a ton of gratitude for him. But we have different people using the tool to give us feedback and understand. We're comfortable now at this point that we can take a sufficient amount of value to the marketplace. So my scenario, my guys have been talking to me from my marketing and sales side, and they were like, well, why don't you just reward the individuals with the chance to sign up for the tool and have access to the school without all the fees and everything else. Well, we came down to a solid number of, hey, if these people are willing to pay $550 per month per month for a year, then we'll allow them to have access to all the school, all the videos, all the assets, which include like waterfalls for investors, performas, due diligence checklists. So, you know, like all the different questions, whether you're talking to your acquisition guy or you're talking to your vertical or your horizontal guy, your excavator, and all the different specific questions that you need to ask. We have a tool that also tracks your time to help you understand where you're spending your time and if you're spending it wisely, and so much more, including what he just added to it. So as part of that, since you guys showed up, we're trying to get our first customers on side of that, onto that tool. It's NAXA. What I want you to do is sign up with Kason. Kason, raise your hand. Sign up with Kason for a demo so you can see it. Then we'll give you a 7-day free trial on the tool and everything so you can see what it is we're talking to. And then we're willing to, since you showed up today, to give you that $550 for everything for a year, if that makes sense, per month. So please sign up, meet Kason, at least do a demo. Can you? And to help with that process, here's your NAXA special offer for in-person attendees only. So it's for you guys. Because cool. I argued with him. I told him no initially because I was like, look, I don't have to give this all away. Like, my value is my value, and I know that. I'm secure in that. And they said, but Steve, we would like to get some momentum on the NAXA side and get your first 100 users and get some activity going. So because I respect who they are and in respect for you guys, this is an opportunity, and we're trying to get our first 100. So give it a taste, schedule a time. If you click that, it's going to take you, if you QR that, it's going to take you to a page where you can get a demo. Kason will show you a demo on NAXA and what it does. And so you can actually see it. Then you'll have a 7-day free trial so you can feel it along with the school and everything. And hopefully that's a value that you guys can appreciate. But again, Kameron, thank you so much, brother. I appreciate the heck out of you. And I'm telling you right now, you guys just had a course from the highest level person I know in the space. And I've got a lot of experience myself. I've done a lot of it myself. And I actually didn't have all the time in the world on that Eagle Mountain deal. And he was a lifesaver because I came in and had him project manage for me along with everything else that I was doing. So that was my initial, some of my initial experience with him, and he's been a blessing ever since. So thank you, Kameron. Can we give him a round of applause, please?
Thanks, guys.
So don't forget, sign up something with Kason so you get like access to all this stuff and at least a demo to see what we're really providing and have some pizza. Does that work? Yeah. Cool. Thank you.